I found the letter in my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon in Phoenix, Arizona, and the moment I saw the HOA logo, I knew my peaceful existence was about to get complicated. The envelope was thick, official-looking, with that pretentious embossed letterhead that screamed self-importance. I stood there in the September heat, sweat already forming on my forehead, and tore it open right there at the curb. What I read made my blood run colder than the 104-degree temperature warranted. Dear Mr. Chen, this letter serves as formal notification that the Desert Bloom HOA Board has made a decision regarding your property at 4287 Sagaro Vista Drive. Effective immediately, you are required to remove the solar panels installed on your roof, repaint your home exterior to an approved color, and remove all desert landscaping in your front yard, replacing it with the community standard grass lawn. You have 30 days to comply or face fines of $500 per day. I read it 3 times. Solar panels, I had applied for those 6 months ago and gotten approval. Desert landscaping. The entire neighborhood was literally built in the Sonoran Desert, and I had spent $8,000 creating a water-conscious native plant landscape that the city of Phoenix had actually given me a rebate for. And the paint. My house was the same shade of warm terracotta it had been when I bought it 2 years ago. I marched back inside, cranked up the air conditioning, and pulled out my HOA binder. Every homeowner in Desert Bloom Estates had one. A thick 3-ring binder with all the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, plus the bylaws. I flipped to the section on board procedures, and there it was, clear as day, Article 7, Section 3. No decisions affecting individual properties shall be made without first providing the homeowner with written notice and an opportunity to be heard at a board meeting. Homeowners must receive notification at least 14 days prior to any discussion of their property. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA management company. A bored-sounding woman answered on the 4th ring. Desert Bloom HOA, this is Jennifer. Hi, this is Marcus Chen from 4287 Sagaro Vista. I just received a letter about my property, and I need to know when this was discussed because I never received any notice. Hold, please. Muzak filled my ear for nearly 5 minutes. Okay, Mr. Chen, I am showing that your property violations were discussed at the August board meeting and again at the September meeting. I never received notice of either meeting. The meetings were posted on the community website. That is not the same as individual notice. Your bylaws require that I be notified when my property is being discussed. Jennifer sighed like I was ruining her day. The board has the right to discuss community matters. Not without notifying me first. It is in Article 7, Section 3 of the Bylaws. I will pass your concerns along to the board president. Who is the board president? Mrs. Patricia Whitmore. Of course it was. Patricia Whitmore, the woman who had cornered me at the community pool last summer to inform me that my swim trunks were inappropriately casual for a family environment. The woman who had sent 3 separate emails to the entire neighborhood about someone's dog barking at 7 in the morning, calling it an assault on the peace of our community. I need her contact information. I cannot give that out. Then I need a meeting with the board. The next scheduled meeting is not until October 15th. That is after the 30-day deadline you gave me. I need an emergency meeting. Another sigh. I will pass along your request. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my living room, looking out at my beautiful desert landscape, the purple blooms of my desert willow tree, the stately saguaro I had carefully transplanted, the ocotillo that attracted hummingbirds every morning. The solar panels on my roof had cut my electricity bill by 70%, crucial in a Phoenix summer where air conditioning was not a luxury but a survival necessity. I pulled out my laptop and started going through my emails. I searched for anything from the HOA about meetings, about my property, about violations. Nothing. I checked my spam folder. Still nothing. I logged into the community website, which I admittedly rarely visited because it was a poorly designed relic from 2010. I found the meeting minutes, and there it was, buried in the August meeting notes. Discussion regarding property at 4287 Seguero Vista Drive. Board expresses concerns about unauthorized modifications. Motion to require removal and restoration. Passed 4-1. Unauthorized modifications. Everything I had done was authorized. I had the approval letters. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder I kept for house documents. There was the solar panel approval from February, signed by Patricia Whitmore herself. There was the landscaping approval from when I moved in, explicitly stating that desert landscaping was encouraged and approved. My phone rang. Unknown number, but a Phoenix area code. Hello, Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Whitmore, president of the Desert Bloom HOA board. I understand you are upset about our letter. Upset was putting it mildly. Mrs. Whitmore, I never received notice that my property was being discussed. Your bylaws require notification. The meetings are posted publicly, Mr. Chen. We are not required to send individual notices for every little thing we discuss. Article 7, Section 3 says otherwise. That clause applies to disciplinary actions, not general discussions. You are requiring me to spend thousands of dollars to undo improvements you already approved. That sounds like a disciplinary action to me. Her voice took on that particular tone of condescension that certain middle-aged women perfect over years of practice. Mr. Chen, the previous board may have made some errors in judgment. This current board is committed to maintaining the standards that make Desert Bloom a premier community. I have the approval letters. Those approvals were issued in error and are hereby rescinded. You cannot retroactively rescind approvals. I made these improvements in good faith with explicit HOA approval. The board has made its decision. You have 30 days to comply. I want a hearing. The bylaws guarantee me the right to be heard before any decision affecting my property. There was a long pause. Fine. We will add you to the October meeting agenda. That is after my deadline. Then I suggest you start making the changes now, Mr. Chen. Good day. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, anger building in my chest. I had bought this house specifically because the HOA seemed reasonable, because the community appreciated the desert environment, because I thought I had found a place where I could actually settle down after years of renting. I was 32 years old. I had worked my entire adult life to save enough for a down payment, and now some power-hungry board president was trying to force me into tens of thousands of dollars of unnecessary changes. I needed help. I pulled up Google and searched for HOA attorney Phoenix, Arizona. Several results came up, but one caught my eye. Rodriguez and Associates, specializing in HOA disputes and homeowner rights. I called immediately. Rodriguez and Associates, this is Maria. Hi, I need to speak with an attorney about an HOA dispute. Can I get some basic information? I explained the situation quickly. She asked me to email over the letter, the bylaws, and my approval documents, which I did while we were on the phone. An attorney will call you back within 24 hours, she said. It took only 3 hours. A man with a confident voice and just a trace of a Texas accent called me at 6 that evening. Mr. Chen, this is David Rodriguez. I have reviewed the documents you sent over, and I have to tell you, this is one of the more blatant violations of HOA bylaws I have seen in a while. Relief washed over me. So I am not crazy, not at all. Article 7, Section 3 is crystal clear. They cannot discuss your property, much less make decisions about it, without giving you prior notice and an opportunity to be heard. The fact that they held not 1 but 2 meetings where they discussed your property without notifying you is a significant breach. What can I do? First, you are going to send a certified letter to the board, citing the specific bylaw violation and demanding that all decisions be rescinded, and that you be given a proper hearing with adequate notice. Second, you are going to request copies of all meeting minutes where your property was discussed. Third, you are going to document everything, every interaction, every call, every email. And if they refuse, then we file a lawsuit for violation of the bylaws and possibly for selective enforcement if we can show they are targeting you specifically. But let us try the diplomatic route first. Sometimes a letter from an attorney is enough to make these boards realize they have overstepped. How much is this going to cost me? Initial consultation is free. If you want to retain me, I charge a flat fee of $2,000 for HOA disputes through the pre-litigation phase. If it goes to court, we can discuss additional fees, but honestly, most of these cases settle once the HOA realizes they are in the wrong. Their insurance companies do not want to pay for their mistakes. $2,000 was a lot, but it was nothing compared to what they were demanding I spend. Let us do it. Great. I will draft the letter tonight and send it to you for approval tomorrow morning. We will send it certified mail, return receipt requested, so we have proof they received it. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over everything in my head, wondering what I had done to attract this attention. I was a quiet neighbor. I worked from home as a software engineer, so I was not out there making noise or causing problems. I kept my property neat. I followed the rules. The next morning, David emailed me the letter. It was beautifully written, professional but firm, laying out exactly how the board had violated their own bylaws and what needed to happen to rectify the situation. I approved it immediately, and he sent it out that afternoon. I also decided to do some investigating of my own. I went for a walk around the neighborhood, actually looking at the other houses for the first time in a while. Desert Bloom Estates had about 200 homes, all built in the early 2000s, all variations on the same southwestern architectural theme. As I walked, I noticed something interesting. At least 15 houses had solar panels. At least 20 had desert landscaping similar to mine. And the paint colors varied wildly, from pale yellows to deep browns to terracotta like mine. I started taking pictures, documenting everything. Then I did something that probably should have occurred to me earlier. I knocked on doors. The first house I tried, 3 doors down from mine, belonged to an older couple named Robert and Susan Patterson. They had a beautiful desert landscape and solar panels on their roof. "Oh, you are the young man Patricia has been complaining about," Susan said when I introduced myself. "She has been complaining about me. At the pool, at the clubhouse, anywhere she can get an audience. She said you were making unauthorized changes and bringing down property values. Everything I did was approved. I have the letters." Robert leaned against his doorframe. "That does not surprise me. Patricia has it out for anyone she thinks is not fitting her vision of what the neighborhood should be. Did you have to get approval for your solar panels?" "Yes, about 5 years ago. Different board back then, very supportive of energy efficiency." "And your landscaping?" "That was original to when we moved in 12 years ago. The developer actually encouraged desert landscaping, used it as a selling point." I showed them the letter I had received. Susan's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. They cannot do this." "I am fighting it. I have an attorney, but I wanted to document that I am not the only one with these features." "You are definitely not," Robert said. "You should talk to Jim Kowalski on Desert Rose Court. He just put up solar panels this spring." I thanked them and continued my rounds. By the end of the afternoon, I had talked to 12 homeowners. All of them had similar features to my property. None of them had received violation letters, and 3 of them told me they had had their own run-ins with Patricia Whitmore over various issues. Jim Kowalski, a friendly guy about my age who worked as a teacher, invited me in for a beer when I knocked on his door. "Dude, Patricia tried to get me to take down my panels in June," he said, handing me a cold IPA. "She said they were ugly and reflected light into her yard." "What did you do?" I told her to pound sand. I had approval from the previous board, and I was not taking down a $15,000 installation because she did not like the way it looked. She threatened to fine me, but nothing ever came of it. She is actually following through with me. Gave me 30 days and a $500 per day fine schedule, Jim whistled. That is harsh. Why you specifically? That is what I am trying to figure out. You know what I heard? Jim leaned forward conspiratorially. Patricia's husband, Greg, he owns a landscaping company. Traditional landscaping, grass and shrubs and all that water-wasting stuff, and her brother-in-law does painting. There is a rumor that they have been trying to drum up business by creating violations. That is illegal. Yeah, well, proving it is another thing, but think about it. Every violation she creates means someone has to hire a contractor to fix it, and she is right there with recommendations. I felt my anger shift into a different gear. If what Jim was saying was true, this was not just an HOA on a power trip. This was a scam. Did she recommend contractors to you? She tried, gave me her husband's business card, said he would give me a neighborhood discount. Do you still have the card? Probably somewhere. Why? Because if she is using her HOA position to generate business for family members, that is a conflict of interest at minimum and possibly fraud. Jim's eyes widened. Damn, you are really going after her. She came after me first. I am just defending myself. He found the business card and I took a picture of it. Whitmore Landscaping and Design with Greg Whitmore listed as owner and operator. Over the next few days, I gathered more information. I found out that Patricia had joined the board 2 years ago and become president last year after the previous president moved out of state. Since taking over, she had ramped up violation notices significantly. I requested copies of violation letters from the management company, citing my rights as a homeowner to review HOA records. Jennifer at the management company was not happy about it, but she complied after I mentioned that my attorney had informed me of my rights under Arizona law. When I reviewed the violations from the past year, a pattern emerged. Patricia had issued 47 violation notices in 12 months. Of those, 32 included recommendations for specific contractors. Of those 32, 23 recommended either Whitmore Landscaping or Precision Painting, which I discovered was owned by Greg Whitmore's brother Thomas. I documented everything and sent it to David Rodriguez. He called me within an hour. This is bigger than I thought, he said. This is not just a bylaws violation. If she is using her HOA authority to funnel business to family members without disclosing the conflict of interest, that is potentially fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and embezzlement if she is receiving any kickbacks. What do we do? We are going to amend our letter, and I think you should also file a complaint with the Arizona Corporation Commission, which oversees HOAs in the state. They can investigate and levy fines. Plus, if this goes to court, it strengthens your case significantly. Should I go to the police? Not yet. Let us see how they respond to the letter first. If they continue to push, then we escalate. The certified letter was delivered on a Friday. I got the notification that someone at Patricia's address had signed for it at 2 in the afternoon. By 5, my phone was ringing. Unknown number again. Hello, Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Whitmore. Her voice was tight, controlled anger barely restrained. I have received your ridiculous letter from your attorney. It is not ridiculous. It is a factual recitation of how you violated the HOA bylaws. You are making a huge mistake. The board has the authority to govern this community, and we will not be bullied by one homeowner who thinks he is above the rules. I am not above the rules. I followed the rules. You are the one who violated them by discussing my property without notice and by using your position to benefit your family's businesses. Silence. Then, I do not know what you are talking about. Yes, you do. I have documentation of 32 violations you issued that included recommendations for your husband's and brother-in-law's companies. Recommending quality contractors is not a crime. It is when you do not disclose the conflict of interest. It is when you manufacture violations to create that business. You are going to regret this. Her voice was pure venom now. Is that a threat? She hung up. I immediately called David and told him about the conversation. Good, he said. Let her make threats, document everything. If she retaliates in any way, we add it to the case. The weekend passed quietly, but on Monday morning, I woke up to find a new letter in my mailbox. This one was from the HOA's attorney, a firm called Berkshire Legal Services. It was a response to my letter, claiming that the board had acted within its authority, that public posting of meeting agendas constituted adequate notice, and that my violations were legitimate regardless of any prior approvals. I forwarded it to David. They are doubling down, he said when he called me. That is fine. We are going to file a lawsuit. I have enough here for breach of contract, violation of bylaws, and we will add in the conflict of interest issues. Are you ready for this? It is going to get messy. I am ready. The lawsuit was filed on Wednesday. By Friday, the story had made its way around the neighborhood. I started getting calls and visits from other homeowners, some supportive, some angry that I was causing trouble. One woman, Carol Brennan, who lived on the HOA board as the treasurer, knocked on my door Saturday morning. "Mr. Chen, can we talk?" I invited her incautiously. "I want you to know that I voted against the decision regarding your property," she said once we were seated. "I told Patricia we needed to give you notice, but she insisted we had the authority to act." "Why did not you push back harder?" Carol looked uncomfortable. "Patricia can be very intimidating." And honestly, I did not realize how seriously she was violating the bylaws until I saw your attorney's letter. I am not a lawyer. I thought maybe she knew something I did not. Did you know about her husband's business? I knew he was a landscaper, but I did not connect it to the violation notices until you pointed it out. When I went back and looked, I was horrified. "Mr. Chen, I am going to resign from the board. I cannot be part of this." "Do not resign. Stay and help me fix it." She shook her head. "I do not have the energy to fight Patricia. She will make my life hell, but I will give you something useful. The October meeting is going to be a special meeting. Patricia is planning to try to amend the bylaws to remove the notice requirement. Can she do that? She needs a majority vote of the homeowners, not just the board, but she is going to try to push it through quickly before people understand what they are voting for." "When is this vote?" "October 1st. She moved up the meeting date." Homeowners are supposed to get notice 7 days in advance, so you should receive something in the mail early next week. Thank you for telling me. After Carol left, I spent the rest of the weekend crafting a plan. If Patricia was going to try to change the bylaws, I needed to make sure the homeowners understood what they were voting on. I wrote a letter explaining the situation, laying out the facts, and providing documentation of Patricia's conflict of interest. I made 200 copies and spent Monday evening walking the neighborhood, putting them in every mailbox. By Tuesday morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. Homeowners wanted to know more, wanted to see the evidence, wanted to know what they could do. I organized a meeting at the community clubhouse for Wednesday evening, independent of the HOA. 60 homeowners showed up. I presented everything: the bylaws violations, the lack of notice, the conflict of interest, the pattern of violations targeting homeowners with desert landscaping and solar panels. I showed them the approval letters I had received and the violation letter demanding I reverse everything. I showed them the business cards and the data on contractor recommendations. The room erupted in angry conversation. Robert Patterson stood up. "I have lived here 12 years, and this is the worst board we have ever had. Patricia has turned our community into her personal fiefdom, and she is using it to line her family's pockets. This needs to stop." A woman I did not know stood up. "What can we do?" David Rodriguez, who had come to the meeting at my invitation, addressed the crowd. "You have several options. First, you can vote down any bylaw amendments at the October meeting. Second, you can call a special election to recall the board members who participated in this. Third, you can support Mr. Chen's lawsuit, which will set a precedent for how the board can and cannot act. And fourth, you can file complaints with the Arizona Corporation Commission about the conflict of interest issues." "How do we recall the board?" someone asked. According to your bylaws, you need a petition signed by 20% of homeowners to trigger a recall election. That is 40 homeowners in this community. Then you need a majority vote to actually remove them. I will sign it right now, Robert said. By the end of the meeting, I had 63 signatures. We had more than enough to trigger a recall election. The October 1st meeting was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the clubhouse. I arrived at 6:30 to find the parking lot already full. The community room, which normally held about 50 people comfortably, had at least 90 homeowners crammed inside. Patricia was at the front table with the other board members, looking pale but defiant. She called the meeting to order and immediately tried to move to the bylaw amendment vote. Point of order, I said, standing up. Before we vote on anything, I want to present the recall petition. Patricia's face went red. That is not on the agenda. It does not need to be. The bylaws allow homeowners to present a recall petition at any properly noticed meeting. David Rodriguez stood up next to me. He is correct, Mrs. Whitmore. And you are required to accept the petition and schedule a recall election within 30 days. Patricia looked at the HOA's attorney, a nervous-looking man in his 50s who had been sitting quietly in the corner. He nodded reluctantly. Fine, Patricia said through gritted teeth. Present your petition. I walked to the front and handed her the petition with 63 signatures. She barely glanced at it before shoving it aside. We will schedule the recall election as required by law. Now, can we proceed with the actual business of this meeting? No, said a voice from the back. It was Susan Patterson. We want to discuss why you have been violating the bylaws and using your position to benefit your family's businesses. The room erupted in agreement. Patricia tried to gavel everyone to silence, but the crowd was not having it. Person after person stood up to share their experiences with Patricia's violations, her recommendations for her husband's company, her threats and intimidation. Finally, Patricia stood up, her face flushed, her hands shaking. You people have no idea what it takes to run this community. I have spent countless hours trying to maintain standards, trying to keep property values up, and this is the thanks I get. You are going to side with this troublemaker who thinks he can ignore the rules. He did not ignore the rules, Carol Brennan said, standing up. He followed them. You are the one who violated the bylaws. You are the one who held meetings about his property without notice. You are the one who has been using your position to enrich your family. I am ashamed I did not speak up sooner, but I am speaking up now. You need to resign. I will not resign, Patricia said. You will have to remove me. Fine, I said. Then we vote. The recall election happens and the homeowners decide whether you stay or go. But in the meantime, I am asking for an injunction against any enforcement action on my property until this is resolved. The HOA attorney cleared his throat. Given the pending litigation and the questions about the board's procedures, I would actually recommend that the board cease all enforcement actions until the legal issues are resolved. Patricia glared at him. You work for us. I work for the HOA, which means I have to advise you to avoid actions that could expose the association to liability. Continuing to enforce a violation that may have been improperly issued is a significant risk. Patricia grabbed her purse and stormed out of the meeting. The remaining board members sat there awkwardly until the vice president, a mild-mannered man named Tom Hernandez, suggested they table all motions until after the recall election. The motion passed unanimously among the remaining board members. The recall election was scheduled for October 28th. In the 3 weeks leading up to it, the neighborhood was consumed with drama. Patricia and her supporters, a small but vocal group of about 15 homeowners, went door-to-door campaigning to keep her in power. My supporters, which included most of the people who had attended my meeting, campaigned for her removal. I tried to stay focused on the facts, the bylaws violations, the conflict of interest, the improper procedures. But Patricia made it personal. She sent an email to the entire community calling me a disruptive influence who was destroying the community with frivolous litigation. She claimed, I was trying to turn Desert Bloom into a slum with my ugly desert landscaping and industrial solar panels. It backfired spectacularly. More homeowners came forward to support me, sharing their own stories of Patricia's overreach. One couple showed me a violation notice they had received for having a vegetable garden in their backyard, which was completely allowed under the bylaws. Another homeowner had been fined for parking his truck in his own driveway because Patricia deemed it too commercial-looking, even though he was a contractor and it was his work vehicle. The day before the election, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Phoenix Police Department Economic Crimes Unit. I am calling about a complaint filed against Patricia Whitmore regarding potential fraud and abuse of authority. Do you have time to talk? My heart raced. Yes, absolutely. We have been reviewing the complaint filed with the Corporation Commission, and some of the allegations rise to the level of criminal conduct. I would like to interview you and review any evidence you have. We set up a meeting for the following week. I provided her with everything: the violation notices, the contractor recommendations, the business records showing the family connections, the bylaws showing the violations, the timeline of events. This is pretty clear-cut, Detective Morrison said after reviewing everything. She has been using her authority to generate business for family members without disclosure. If we can prove she received any financial benefit, direct or indirect, that is fraud. We are going to investigate her husband's business records, look at any payments between them, that sort of thing. What happens to her? If we build a case, we will present it to the prosecutor. They will decide whether to file charges, but I will tell you this is exactly the kind of case we like to pursue. HOAs wield a lot of power over people's homes and lives. When that power is abused for personal gain, we take it seriously. The recall election took place on a Thursday evening. Nearly every homeowner showed up to vote. The results were overwhelming: 137 votes for recall, 42 votes against. Patricia Whitmore, along with the 3 board members who had supported her actions, were removed from the board. An interim board was appointed by the remaining members, with Robert Patterson as the president. One of their first actions was to rescind all violation notices issued in the past year and to review them for legitimacy. My violation notice was thrown out entirely. They also passed a resolution requiring board members to disclose any conflicts of interest and prohibiting them from recommending contractors in which they had a financial interest. But the story was not over. In December, Detective Morrison called me again. "We have enough for charges," she said. Patricia Whitmore is being charged with fraud and theft. We found that her husband's company received over $200,000 in business from homeowners in your community in the past year, and we can trace a pattern of Patricia issuing violations, followed by Greg getting hired to fix them. We also found that Greg was paying Patricia a percentage of each contract as a referral fee, which she never disclosed. When will she be arrested? The prosecutor is filing charges today. She will probably be arrested within the week. Patricia Whitmore was arrested on a Monday morning. The local news covered it, a brief story about an HOA president charged with fraud. The charges against her were serious: fraud, theft by extortion, and abuse of fiduciary duty. Greg was charged as an accomplice. The case took months to wind through the court system. I was called as a witness in the preliminary hearing, where I testified about the violation notice I received and the pattern of conduct I had documented. Patricia's attorney tried to paint me as a disgruntled homeowner with an axe to grind, but the evidence was overwhelming. In March of the following year, Patricia accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to fraud and agreed to pay restitution to the HOA and to affected homeowners. She was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 6 months of home detention, and 200 hours of community service. She was also permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. Greg Whitmore pled guilty to lesser charges and received probation and a fine. My lawsuit against the HOA was settled in April. The HOA agreed to pay my attorney's fees, to formally apologize for the bylaws violations, and to implement new procedures to ensure homeowners received proper notice before their properties were discussed. They also agreed to provide training to all board members on conflicts of interest and fiduciary duties. The new board, led by Robert Patterson, turned out to be exactly what the community needed. They focused on actual community improvements rather than petty enforcement. They encouraged water-wise landscaping and renewable energy. They organized community events that brought neighbors together rather than driving them apart. I kept my solar panels, my desert landscaping, and my terracotta paint. My property became something of a showcase for what could be done with sustainable desert living, and I even gave a presentation at a community meeting about water conservation and solar energy. Several neighbors followed my lead, installing their own solar panels and converting their lawns to desert landscapes. The experience taught me several important lessons. First, always document everything. The evidence I gathered was crucial to proving my case and exposing Patricia's corruption. Second, know your rights. If I had not read the bylaws carefully and understood that I was entitled to notice, I might have just complied with their demands. Third, community matters. The support I received from my neighbors made all the difference. But perhaps the most important lesson was about the nature of power and how easily it can be abused. Patricia Whitmore was not some criminal mastermind. She was a middle-aged woman with too much time on her hands and a husband struggling to grow a business. She saw an opportunity to use her position for personal benefit, and she took it, probably rationalizing it to herself as not that big a deal. The problem with HOAs is that they are mini-governments with significant power but often minimal oversight. They can fine you, put liens on your home, even force you into foreclosure. When that power is wielded responsibly by people who genuinely want to maintain and improve their community, HOAs can be beneficial. But when that power falls into the wrong hands, when it is used for personal gain or petty tyranny, it can make homeowners' lives miserable. I still live in Desert Bloom Estates. It is a good community, much better now than it was under Patricia's reign. The new board is responsive and transparent. They hold meetings that homeowners actually want to attend because they are productive rather than adversarial. Violation notices are rare and usually for legitimate issues like actual safety hazards or blatant rule violations. I occasionally see Patricia around Phoenix. She never acknowledges me, always looks away when our paths cross. I do not take any pleasure in what happened to her, but I do not regret fighting back either. She made a choice to abuse her authority, and she faced the consequences. My house is worth more now than when I bought it, despite Patricia's claims that my improvements would hurt property values. The solar panels and desert landscaping actually became selling points in the neighborhood. Several homes have sold with real estate agents specifically mentioning the sustainable features and the reasonable HOA. I learned to be more involved in community governance. I attend most board meetings now, not because I do not trust the current board, but because I understand how quickly things can go wrong when homeowners are not paying attention. I serve on the Architectural Review Committee, helping to review applications for home improvements. I try to apply common sense and the actual written rules rather than personal preferences. The whole experience took about 8 months from that first letter to the final settlement, 8 months of stress and anger and fighting, but it was worth it. Not just for me, but for everyone in the community who might have become Patricia's next target. I think about those meetings they held, discussing my property without notice, making decisions that would have cost me tens of thousands of dollars, never once giving me a chance to defend myself or explain. I think about how close I came to just complying, to just accepting their demands because fighting seemed too hard, too expensive, too risky. That is what people like Patricia count on. They count on people being too tired, too busy, too intimidated to fight back. They count on people not knowing their rights or not having the resources to enforce them. They count on being able to wield their little bit of authority without challenge or consequence. But sometimes, people do fight back. Sometimes, people take the time to read the bylaws, to gather evidence, to find a good attorney, to organize their neighbors. And when that happens, when the abuse of power is exposed to sunlight, justice has a chance to prevail. My advice to anyone dealing with an HOA dispute is simple. Read your governing documents, document everything, seek legal advice early, and do not be afraid to stand up for your rights. Your home is probably the biggest investment you will ever make. Do not let anyone abuse their authority to take that away from you. It is also important to remember that not all HOA boards are corrupt or tyrannical. Most people who serve on HOA boards are trying to do a good job, volunteering their time to help their community. But the structure of HOAs makes abuse possible, so homeowners need to be vigilant. Attend meetings, ask questions, review the financials, make sure the board is following the bylaws and acting in the community's best interest rather than their own. The Desert Bloom community is stronger now because we went through this ordeal. We learned that we could not take good governance for granted, that we had to participate and hold our leaders accountable. We learned that the bylaws were not just decorative documents but actual rules that meant something and could be enforced. And on a personal level, I learned that I was stronger than I thought. I am not naturally a fighter. I am a computer programmer who likes quiet evenings at home and prefers to avoid conflict. But when I was pushed, when my home and my rights were threatened, I found the courage to push back. That Tuesday afternoon when I found the letter in my mailbox seems like a lifetime ago now. The anger and fear I felt have faded, replaced by satisfaction and confidence. I won. Not just the legal battle, but the bigger fight to restore integrity to my community. I still get a little nervous when I see an HOA envelope in my mailbox, a lingering anxiety from those months of conflict. But when I open them now, they are usually just newsletters or notices of community events. The new board does not govern through threats and intimidation. They govern through communication and collaboration. My solar panels still gleam on my roof, generating clean energy and saving me money every month. My desert landscape still attracts hummingbirds and butterflies, thriving with minimal water in our harsh desert climate. My terracotta paint still glows warmly in the Arizona sun. These things, which Patricia tried to take from me, which she used as an excuse to funnel money to her family, are now celebrated in the community. We won an award from the City of Phoenix for being a water-wise community. Our HOA was featured in a local magazine as an example of sustainable desert living. None of that would have happened if I had not fought back, if I had not stood up and demanded that the HOA follow its own bylaws, if I had not exposed the corruption that was festering at the heart of our community governance. The legal system worked, slowly and imperfectly, but it worked. Patricia was held accountable. The HOA reformed its practices. Homeowners were protected. Justice was served. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just complied with that first letter, if I had torn down my solar panels and ripped out my desert landscape and repainted my house. I would have spent tens of thousands of dollars. I would have given up features that I loved and that made my home more sustainable and valuable. And Patricia would have continued her scheme, targeting other homeowners, using her authority to enrich herself and her family. But I did not comply. I fought. And because I fought, the community is better, the rules are stronger, and future homeowners are protected from that kind of abuse. That is the real victory, not just that I kept my solar panels and my landscaping, but that I helped create a system where the next person targeted by a corrupt board would have protections, where the bylaws would be followed, where conflicts of interest would be disclosed, where homeowners would have a voice. Desert Bloom Estates is my home, and it is a better home now than it was 2 years ago. The community has learned from this experience, grown stronger, become more engaged and more vigilant. We know now that good governance requires participation, that authority must be checked, that power without accountability leads to abuse. I learned that standing up for yourself matters, that one person can make a difference, that knowing your rights and being willing to fight for them can change outcomes not just for yourself but for everyone around you. Those meetings they held without notifying me, those discussions of my property conducted in violation of the bylaws, they were the beginning of this story but not the end. The end came when Patricia was held accountable, when the bylaws were enforced, when the community came together to demand better. It was a fight I never wanted, a battle I never expected to have when I bought my house in this quiet Phoenix suburb. But it was a fight worth fighting and a battle worth winning. Not just for me, but for everyone who believes that rules should mean something, that authority should be exercised responsibly, and that homeowners have the right to be heard before decisions are made about their property. The sun sets beautifully over the Sonoran Desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. I watch it from my backyard, surrounded by native plants that have evolved over millennia to thrive in this harsh environment. My house is cool and comfortable, powered in part by the sun that now sets before me. This is my home and I protected it. That is what matters. That is what I will remember when the details of this fight fade into memory. I protected my home, my rights, and my community, and that is enough.